And is it time? It is time. Can't find my agenda. All right, we'll call the meeting to order for the City of Sunset Valley Budget and Finance Committee for the 9th of July. The time is 6:01 p.m. We'll ask for citizen comments. Do we have any tonight? Are we not fun anymore? What happened? We had a big following last week. Put them all to sleep.
Would you like me to jump to open town hall, see if there's any comments there?
I didn't see any earlier when I looked.
Okay.
And you should have attended our Tuesday meeting, Michael. You could have had all the fun you wanted.
Well, I was on for a while and I went cold dead, and so I left.
God, it was brutal.
After about an hour, I thought, oh, yeah, still have fun. See ya.
Yeah.
Whew. You got through it, though. Sometimes
We
it
did.
takes time. Just takes time. All right, council liaison report.
Okay, well, we did have our marathon meeting on Tuesday, and the main gist of that meeting was a zoning change for 4800 on Highway 290. And that is the lot that is adjacent to Stearns Lane. So there was the neighborhood, the Barton Creek View neighborhood was out in force and telling and giving input to the council. And so we ended up with the zoning change to neighborhood office with the restriction that there was no access from that property onto Stearns. So the second thing, the other thing we accomplished is that we are having our grievance policies being reviewed by legal. There's a couple of gaps in them, and legal will come back to that. And then under the CARES Act, the city is eligible for reimbursement of around $37,000. Now those are very specific expenses, so I'm not sure we'll be eligible for that whole pot of money, but we are eligible for $37,000 if we have the eligible expenses. So, and that is about it. Thanks.
I told Wanda my only restriction for the Stearns thing was, were they going to generate sales tax? That's all. That's
Yeah.
Whatever you want to sell over there, I don't care. Just sales tax. Charles, good to see you. All right. Who are we missing then? I think everybody's here. Terry's not here. Okay. All right, on to our fourth agenda item. Review, discuss, and possible action on the Public Works proposed budget. That's going to be page 12, 13, and 14 that you got last week. Before we launch into this, Caroline and Sylvia, the staff reductions that we did, were those taken into account on all the budget items? In other words, you know, reduction in education, anything and everything that had to do with staff quantity has been adjusted on this budget?
Should have been.
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe we have adjusted, yeah, the amounts in like training and education on in this budget here.
Okay, that was just an example. I just meant, you know, I know you reduced the salaries and those kind of things, but, you know, obviously it extrapolates out to uniforms and all kinds of things, right? So, okay. Anybody else before we jump into it?
Yeah, so our paper copy is the bronze budget, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Turn the fan on in here.
So yeah, there is a silver version of the budget as well that, you know, that's kind of like the, you know, Essentials Plus basically moving into that. So, but you guys are looking at the bronze, which is more of the Essentials kind of budget.
Okay, thanks.
I didn't have any question on these. I'm sure you've adjusted all the salary numbers and taxes and all that accordingly. So I don't, unless anybody else has a specific question.
Yeah, the only thing I had a couple little just comments. I guess not really comments, but maybe a better understanding is like kind of a new one is a traffic consultant for 2,500.
What's the,
Yeah, and then fuel seems really high too, I thought.
yeah, I thought I'd just start at the top and kind of move our way down.
Oh, okay, sorry. I'm
No,
just
it's okay.
jumping in.
I've got little notes there on those as well.
Okay, okay. Well, let's just move down. Go ahead.
Uh,
And just for one clarification, and this is Carolyn, just to make sure, looking at the documents, with the silver budget, you guys are asking for 2 additional positions.
Yes, there's a couple things in there that are, there are 2 additional maintenance tech positions that we're asking for in the silver budget, having those positions reinstated. And then there's a couple other things in there that are, you know, like the youth program and bringing those kind of things back in the next year, just depending on what's happening. But yeah, those are in the silver budget.
I guess I wanted to maybe dive into that a little bit more because, you know, when we're talking about staffing changes, it's a little bit different than, you know, what we've been doing to date, and kind of getting into what services will go unfulfilled, you know, without those staffing positions, or what new services we'll be able to add on, just to the context of like why they're silver, not bronze, you know, what the need is, because I think your department's the only one that's asking for additional staffing with you know, potential, you know, difference in budget, and maybe you could walk through that a little bit and the thought process of the need behind it.
So I can address that. So the Planning and Environmental Committee has done several meetings on not just ranking programs and services, but then also looking at whatever programs and services could potentially be self-sustaining. And so as they went through the ranking, obviously the first pass was essential, and things like fire safety and those kinds of things ranked higher. And then there was those services and programs that perhaps had a long time community tie, and we needed to do them. They've been very popular in the community, and those should be done. And then we ended up with things like having to decide on curbside mulch or mulch delivery and those kinds of things, and how can we change the expectation a little bit and recoup maybe a little bit of revenue so that it covers itself. And so we went through that entire ranking. We went through a cost of service sheet, and then just getting through the essential services is when we determined we have literally just enough staff. We can't add any more. And that's not including some of the green space management. That's not including, again, some of the Firewise things. And so one of the things that I'm looking at right now is our contract with TextEscape and our contract with Temporary Services. So I've got to give a cost benefit of that. I don't have the estimate back yet, so I can't give you that response directly. But we're talking program services and projects at the next budget meeting. So it's my hope that at that point we're able to flush most of that out, and then the Budget and Finance Committee can do a good analysis and comparison as to how they'd like to present and recommend to the council.
Okay, and I guess just from that statement and maybe teasing that out a little bit, we'll get another chance to look at it. But is it the understanding right now that there are services that are essential, like the Firewise and some of those things that, and I don't know if those are considered essential in terms of those analysis, that cannot be performed with current staff, and so either we will be paying a cost in contracting or in new staff? Is that correct, or are these services that don't rise to that level? But I want to make sure I was clear on how you're characterizing that.
No, they rise to the level,
Okay.
and we're going to have to offset some other things that, you know, again, aren't perhaps essential, but we're doing them because it's just been something that we've done forever.
Okay.
Some mowing and rights away, for example.
Okay.
Yeah, along with Mark's question, my assumption of this budget showing the bronze here is that the services that are implied in this are you're able to do those services.
Yes, in the bronze budget, but we are pretty much tapped out after this bronze budget.
Okay.
I had sent out some cost of service sheets before. If you multiply out all of the services and things that we provide just in the bronze budget, we're pretty tapped out with the staff that we have.
Okay. Is that good, Mark? Charles?
I had two questions. One, my understanding was that Public Works had asked for two positions, a construction supervisor and a maintenance technician. What is the status of their request versus what's in the silver version of the budget?
That,
That's a bit different. So,
Yeah, that's different.
so the Public Works Department is asking for 2 maintenance tech positions, and that's also the recommendation from Planning and Environmental on the silver budget. The Public Works Committee wants to bring in a Public Works director or an engineer or a construction supervisor.
and that's
That
on
would
the
be
parking lot.
That's on their parking lot for silver budget, going forward.
Okay,
But none of those are in the bronze budget.
No.
right.
No.
Okay.
Secondly, I'm wondering what the rationale is behind breaking out the salaries for the Public Works position across multiple departments, including the different funds.
Well,
That seems very confusing to me.
One, it's true fund accounting, and we've always broken it out across 5 funds. This year, we're breaking it out across the 7 funds. So we've always done that. There's nothing new. We've just added 2 additional funds this year.
And Charles, I think that's a great question. I wrestled with a lot of this today. One of my requests tonight was going to be, what I'd like to see is an overarching sheet with all these calculations on one page so that we can see,
Right.
again, globally, because there's some items that are on Public Works, then there's some in the green tax, and there's some in drainage, and they're spread around. And so you really have to kind of go back and forth to try and understand what's going on there. Just for clarity, it's kind of like our overarching status sheet that we're using. I don't know,
we have
Suzanne,
sent
that's something we can pull together so that the committee can be clear on some of those?
It's been sent out, Michael. I will have it on the screen whenever you guys are ready to look at it.
Okay.
It was sent
And-
out in the email that she sent out.
Was that on the email?
The payroll was, or the salaries and benefits were, but I think you're asking for more than just that, right? You're asking for like other things that maybe get broken out between departments, or are you just talking about budgets and salaries?
I think, Charles, you were talking about budget and salary, right?
I was talking about budget and salaries, but I think your point is taken. There's a number of other items like IT costs that are also spread across departments that we don't have a global view of what the total costs of those are. So it would be good to have those as well.
Okay.
From what I understand is they're currently in there like that, and then you guys asked us to break them out between departments.
Yeah.
And we haven't done that yet on the sheets. We can still, but from what I understand, they're currently in the budget like that. And then the salaries breakdown, Sylvia brought that up. There's 2 tabs on it. I sent this out with the email. And for the bronze budget, it has all of them, their base salary plus all of the amounts per benefits total. And then on the second tab, it's the positions with all of the allocations. So how much per person is allocated per fund. Does that make sense? Is that kind of what you guys were looking for?
Yes.
It does.
However, yeah, go ahead, Charles.
I was going to say there was one thing I noticed on this, Suzanne, which is that I sent you an email on this. I don't know if you got a chance to see it. For the Parks and Natural Resources Manager, the totals for Department 01, administrative, and for 18, which is the green fund, on the spreadsheet you sent out yesterday, seem to be transposed.
I think that's from me and
or is it-
Carolyn talked about it, and we tweaked her allocation a little bit in the budget, but I didn't update it on here yet. I forgot about the spreadsheet, so I'll have to update that as well. But they are supposed to be what is in the actual budget sheets and not here, and I can fix that and send it out again.
So what's accurate? The spreadsheet you sent out yesterday or the sheets we got last week?
The sheets you got last week are accurate.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to understand. Thank you.
So Carolyn had a conversation regarding how much is actually in general fund and how much is actually in green tax. And we think the allocation as it's represented is accurate.
This is a diversion, but just before I forget, one of the things we talked about last week was, we thought we might have a better idea of revenue number on the 16th. I know that's not on the budget, but remember that was one of our conversations last week was, did we want to adjust that income number? We thought we'd have a better idea on the 16th. Anyway, Regine, if that's something before we depart this evening, if we can touch on that, that would be helpful.
Those numbers are out.
Yeah, revenues actually came in better. They came in at 20.6 below expectation, so nowhere near the 80%.
Well, that's good. Well, today, who knows what this will look like in 60 days. But yeah, I think some of what Charles was talking about that I found was some of the chart of account numbers are spread across these different sheets, and trying to put them together was a little challenging. So maybe Public Works has one, and I agree with you. True accounting is those things should be broken out based on the percentage of their participation in those departments, right? It gives us an accurate representation of what's going on the expenditure end. But some kind of global document would be helpful.
Mr. Chairman?
So that's what we have in OpenGov.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Yes, Mr. Alfonso.
Okay. I was looking the papers that they gave it to us last week. And they have one in which you have position name. And if you will go to funds and department and allocation, from there, they need to go to one that would be a resume or abstract. So in that way, you separate per person or per department. So this is something that perhaps Suzanne needs to be working with that. I made that, and for me it was really important because when I came to one abstract, I have what is the cost for each department. So when I was looking, I broke public works, utilities water, venue green, utilities wastewater, streets, utilities solid waste, and drainage. And you have the cost for employees only in public works will be $93,740, but in drainage is $19,000. So perhaps for the committee, it's important to have this abstract, so it will be more simple, and in this way will be easy to figure out where we allocate more funds, because in the other they have that information, but it's not simple, and you have to work a lot in order to produce this abstract. I agree with that. But I think that the finance department, they can spend time. It took me almost 2 hours, but they have more experience than I, so they can do that more simple. But it's necessary. Thank you.
Yes, I agree.
So this is a question for Susanna. Is there a way in OpenGov that the way we code our departments that you can bring up like IT services across all departments and run a report from OpenGov like that?
Yep.
Actually, yes, it's really easy. I made a report that already has all of that information in it.
I'm in report, Susanna. Guide me through it.
So if you go to the FY21 budget, I believe it's the third one there. Yeah, I believe that's the bronze budget. No, that's the silver. Sorry, go back one. There's one that's silver and one that's bronze. but everybody here only has access to this bronze one. So if you go here, you can go to if you want to look at just expenses, you can change it to expenses under show. Then you can also change it to what funds you want to look at, what departments, or you can go to expense type and pull that up. And if you open up all of these, it'll give you every single GL that we have currently. So you can look at all IT costs from, I believe IT is in, there you go. And that'll show you all the IT costs over the last 5 years, plus what we have in the budget for this year.
It's not broken out by department because it is all allocated to the administration.
Administration. Mhm.
But once we break that amount out, it'll show it between all of the departments.
So this is a really good tool where if we want to know overall cost of IT services or overall cost of whatever, we can just run that quick report. We don't have to go and hand pick it from each, line budget. So
Correct. And every item that you guys have in that bronze budget, and there's even a report for the silver budget. I'll have her give you the view to that. But the bronze budget is available, and any expense that you see that's embedded within those sheets is able to be drilled down. So again, this is available to all of the committee members. And so if we have a specific, if it's more than just IT services, if we want to look at, benefits, for example, if we want to just look at life insurance benefits, very, very, very powerful tool, and it's available to all of the committee members.
Okay. You ready to jump back in the budget?
We are, I think, can you see my screen?
Yep. On account code 5091, Caroline, this is the licensing incentives. Scroll down a little bit. You had 3,300 budgeted in 20. We spent 21, and you're budgeting at $465. But in your descriptor, you say there's an increase due to additional certifications.
That we'll have to look at. I'm not sure why why they're right there. It's going to be adjusted based on the number of employees. We will have some people doing some different testing, so there may be some, but I imagine it's going to be lower, but maybe a little bit more than that, but less than what it was before.
Yeah, I was okay. I'm okay with the dollar amount, but your comment says there's an increase. So I just want to be sure that dollar amount you have in there is in fact a correct dollar amount, since you're talking about an increase and it's actually a reduction.
Yeah, I will look at that one.
Okay. Moving down to 5133, urban forestry. This is one of those that's spread on different sheets. So if you look at the proposed budget amount is 3,000. What we actually are going to project to use is 1,759. But in the comments, it talks about, the second part of the comment says, this budget has been increased due to the need for increased cost for tree removals and the need for qualified contractors to perform removals in the utility lines. But if you look at the 5133 in the green tax, which is what the reference is in there, the line item is urban forestry. You actually have $8,000 budgeted there from an actual cost of $1,000 this year. So between the two, you've got $11,000 budgeted, but you only did 1759 this year, and the budget last year was 4,000. So help me understand how we got from 4,000 or from 1,759 actual costs to 11 grand.
Part of that, so we did move, and we may need to replace that comment, but we did move some of it over to the green tax a while ago. Part of that is we were able to do a lot more probably in-house at the first part of this year. And we've not had as much storm damage really, and we haven't had as many dying trees. It's been a pretty nice year as far as the trees have gone. So we've not had to contract any additional removals. So we can, I think we have it at 3,000. I would be fine taking this down to 2 over here. I imagine that we're going to get some more coming out of the green tax. So on the actuals for 2019. But yeah, there could be some adjustment there.
Okay, well that doesn't explain the 8,000 you have in.
So the total in urban forestry is 11,000, 3 within this fund and 8 in the green tax.
Right, so we went from a $4,000 budgeted item for the actual 20 year to 11 grand when she just said she could reduce the 3,000 to 2,000. What's the real number here?
Last year,
where do these numbers come from?
yeah, last year the number was $12,000, and then the year before that the number was the actual was about $7,500. So
Yeah, the fiscal year 19 pre-audit was 4,000. The most you've ever used was back in 17 when we spent 10, and we've been kind of going down since then. And then this year the actual was 17, now we're at 11.
we'll go back and look at that number.
Okay. And again, like Charles said earlier, there's some here and there's some there. So you have to go across all of the different places to be sure you get a clear picture of what's transpiring in those. So,
Here,
I mean, if we think there's something of substance going to go on, then the comment should be in, I think, we anticipate taking down more trees or whatever the case might be, but the comments don't get you there. Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, Michael.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Charles, go ahead. I'm just curious about something that Charles brought up, the fact that like the urban forestry item, is there any way just looking at this sheet that, how do we distinguish that a particular line item actually has other components spread in other funds? I mean, is there any way to distinguish that just looking at a line item that it is singular or that it has brothers and sisters in other funds as well? You know, so, you know, we're looking at a number. That number may not be representative of the cost because that cost also gets reflected in other funds as well, or that expenditure, right?
Yeah. Typically, it's public works where we see most of that sort of thing happening because they do have those different funds, then they shift percentage of responsibility throughout those funds.
It seems like you know, pardon me, but it seems like a shell game, you know. I mean, you have enough walnut shells, you can do almost anything, right? Just hide that P or multiple P's anywhere you want, and you can maneuver and make your budget, right? You know, I'm just, again, the neophyte, right? Looking at this basically for the first time. It's hard to get a picture from any one of these sheets on what's actually going on when costs are spread out all over the budget in all these various funds. But anyway,
Looking
I
at
was curious about that. And I also wanted to say too that I find the descriptions very important. And you know, if I think to err on the side of more information than not enough, than not as much, is preferable. right? Provided, of course, that that information is correct. Because a lot of that clarity can be brought out potentially in the description. Thank you.
And that's the role of the description, is an opportunity for staff to say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what we've done in the past. Here's what we anticipate in the future. Here's why that adjustment. That's how that's supposed to work. A quick question on workers' comp. I know that's driven by payroll. That's 5150. We budgeted 33. We went to 20. And we're projecting 32. I see 5150 also in the drainage. There's a small amount in drainage. I see 5150 in venue tax, green tax as well. But again, I guess that's are we sure those were based on actual costs? That's a pretty substantial cut for 2 staff members. Just want to make sure that was a good number.
I'll let Regine.
No, that would, and it would also be a cut for 5 staff members.
Okay. 5325 construction management. We went from 17.5 budgeted. We spent $2,500 last year, or this budget year. Nothing's proposed. Then in the comments it says
those are going to be billed to the actual project. So we had construction management costs within the general fund that really should have been allocated to the project for which the cost was being associated.
Yeah, and it looks like the $5,000, it looks like there was a copy error on those. That was from 1819, so that's why that may have seemed confusing. That should be removed.
Yeah, there is no green tax transfer, so that's not correct. Okay. Planning services 5332, same thing there.
Same thing.
7.2 and went to 0. Now that one does have 5325. Now that's another one that doesn't show up. It makes a comment about move tax, but that's not actually what happened. Does that make sense, Caroline?
Yes, that makes sense.
$53.50. Is that number based
I'm
on?
sorry. Can I interrupt for just a second?
No.
I'm sorry. Can I interrupt?
Go ahead.
I'm just trying to clarify something. So we just took away a comment out of that planning services, and I didn't see what was deleted. What was deleted out of there?
It says
What did it say?
it's a transfer from. It says move $5,000 in 1819.
So we did that. That is a history note. So I mean, I just want to make sure that we.
It's not in there, Regine.
It was moved in 1819.
Well, then
It was moved to the budget. So I just don't want to lose that history if because in 1819 that was the first time we moved things to the venue tax, and so I don't care if it's in there or not. I just want to make that point that you're losing the history of what happened to that line item.
Okay, I made sure that the chart of account code was not over there. Right, so that was 5332. 5332 doesn't show up in the venue tax
At all. Okay, well, then that makes sense. I didn't see what was gone, so that makes sense. I just wanted to be sure we weren't losing the history.
Absolutely, no, I agree with you. If it wasn't there, but I think it's just a cut and paste, and so the data that's in that box isn't. Okay, good catch.
Thank you.
Ground maintenance. Did we do the proposals on that?
That's a
One
Sorry, can you
considerable
repeat that?
increase.
How hard is that number?
I will double check that. It may be a little less actually. I needed to look at that, and we may not have as much a contractual increase as we thought on that, but I will double check that number.
Do we do 53 cuts or 46?
What was that?
How many cuts a year do we do on our contract?
It depends on the area. Some of the areas are 26, some are 44. I think City Hall itself may be actually 48.
Okay.
But yeah, it just depends on the area. Most of the right-of-ways are 26.
Sylvia, I think that was something you were talking about earlier today, about taking another look at that number.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And actually, I just saw something we need to change right here. The Adopt-A-Tree is actually in the silver budget, not in the bronze budget, but it isn't in and out, so it doesn't affect anything as well.
Yeah, it's just it's in and out. So
Yeah.
traffic consultant, is that an essential service? Where did that come from, and why is there's no
No,
justification for that? It just says funds for professional services. It's not been budgeted before.
I think it was budgeted this past year, and that was it. So I think that there was a lot of traffic studies that was happening at one point. I think it's probably can come out.
Yeah, you budgeted for it, but you didn't use it at all. So I'm just wondering, is that essential or a non-essential service?
it's a non-essential.
All right, so that needs to come out. Adopt-A-Tree goes in and out. Trail master plan, is that essential or non-essential?
Some of it would be essential, sign replacements and things like that, because even though we have a lot of, a lot of people are out on trails right now.
Well, you spent $600 in this fiscal year, and you're proposing $3,500 for next year.
We could probably reduce that a little bit, to maybe say if we did 2,000, because you can see it bounces back and forth a little bit, and so with almost 5,000 one year to 930 to 4,200, so
Right.
we could look at that a little bit to get it a little different number than that one.
So is the number 3,500, is that driven by anticipated projects, or how did you come up with that number?
We were just taking a percentage off of it, but we can probably, I'll look at that a little harder and see if I can get a better number.
Okay, so because one of the things we talked about is we don't want the trails to become a safety issue, right? We don't have any granite, and we can't fix a tripping hazard, or we can't fix a washout. Those would be, I think that qualifies as an essential maintenance. As far as making it pretty or adding more, I don't think that's essential. And so I think that's what I'm kind of driving in on that number. Where did it come from, and how did it rise to that dollar amount? So if you can look at that. Sorry, guys, I read through all this. So,
Michael, I have another question, sir.
Charles?
With regard to that Adopt-A-Tree program, you talked about that $7,000 being an in and out. So that means it's subtracted from somewhere else in another fund? Is that what that means? Because I mean, it is in that column and it does get totaled up in the end, that $7,000.
It means
So
there's
how-
a revenue of 7,000 to offset that expense.
Oh, okay. All right. And just on the subject of my last question, just a suggestion. If there was another column on this spreadsheet that would indicate, like for a particular item, like the example that we had earlier, the urban forestry, that in fact, it shows up in other funds. If there was another column on this spreadsheet that would just indicate which funds that item is also present at, I think that could be very useful. It certainly could be useful for me. Maybe suggestion anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. You're right. And, I think we talked about this last week. I appreciate you being here because you have the new eyes, and we're thinking about going, well, yeah, you're right. And you wouldn't know that, but some of us old farts have been doing it for a while, so we know where it's spread around in there. But it provides clarity, right? We've talked about that. So good point. Thank you for that. Community gardens. Essential, non-essential?
So we did reduce, we've reduced kind of the amount of service to that, and we aren't offering up soil, buying soil or anything like that, but there is still kind of maintenance part of the community garden that the city is still responsible for. And there are a lot of gardeners right now.
Anybody? Essential, non-essential? If there's a lot of folks out there, then, you know.
I did notice looking at it in OpenGov that it's in the bronze budget, but it's not in the silver budget, which I assume is an oversight in the silver budget.
Yeah,
That would be an
it should
oversight.
be. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going off the bronze. Environmental Monitoring Service, 5446. That one. That one is also between the two different funds. And I'm wondering, I didn't see any past history on that. It was $500 budgeted in 20. We used nothing in this fiscal year, but in green tax, there's $2,500 budgeted, and it's provide funds for water quality monitoring. Again, it says they're moved $1,500 to green tax. That really didn't have. It's not on the spreadsheet that way. Again, my question is, if we budgeted 500 last year, we didn't use any of it. Why are we budgeting $2,500 this year? Is it driven by a project?
So that covers any kind of the testing we are going to do. So for example, so why it's in the general fund budget is because there are certain things that we can't necessarily cover out of green tax. So say there was a lot of concern regarding air pollution, and we do have some air pollution requirements with CAPCOG as well. Not necessarily for testing, but just from other aspects of that. There are also, so in green tax would be water quality and kind of watershed and sediment testing. This would be more of things that we couldn't consider out of green tax. So that's kind of where we're at with that program. And some of it is driven by need and concerns during the year. So this year, nobody's requested anything.
So Caroline, I'm not discrediting what you're saying. I guess I'm just questioning the authenticity of the number. You've gone from no expenditures to $2,500 with, in 19, you spent $1,400. You budgeted 25 and you spent nothing. And then now you're coming back and asking for 25 again.
I think part of that was also looking at the pond.
Is that, if that's an essential service, okay, but I'm just trying to shore up the numbers a little bit.
So I think in the general fund, it's more of a placeholder, just to have something in there in case we need to do any of that testing. In green tax, I would say, I think we increased that number somewhat because of any kind of testing we may need to do regarding the pond and getting the pond working properly and keeping the pond working properly.
Okay, I'll send you the tools and how many hours you work each week for the last 5 or 6 weeks. How's that?
Okay. I mean, come on, I'm the only one reading through this stuff. Come on, guys. Well, all right, so you're telling me we can zero that out on Public Works, and you're saying that we need to go from 0 to 2,500 because we're going to be required to do some testing? I'm just trying to understand.
Not necessarily required. It's just going to be more along the lines to keep it in a good equilibrium and balance. I think we're going to have some testing with that once we get moving forward. But we can look at that a little harder at the green tax, I guess, when we get to that one fully.
Well, you can't look at one without looking at the other because they're tied together. So that's why I'm bouncing back and forth.
I understand that pond is a pretty delicate environmental balance. So I think I'd rather err on the side of caution on that one.
Yeah, no. Again, I'm not discrediting I'm just trying to say, well, where did that number come from? Is it involved? Yes, we have to do quarterly testing. We're required to do this. Here's what that costs, right? How did we get to that number? So, okay.
Yeah, Michael?
Alfonso? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think that at this moment, I was a little confused with this. At this moment, we have public works, but in the way that we split public works, now we have different departments. So it looks like that we have one big department and other divisions. And sometimes they allocate expenditures in different divisions. And looks like that this is a little confused. So for example, at this moment, for me, water quality, I will be talking water quality, and they are looking sediments, or they are looking ponds, or etc. So that will go to the green tax, no in public works, because all of that, it can be part of that pollution, but that needs to be in green tax, and we don't need to have that here. So looking public works as a macro is the place where you don't need to have a lot of specific things, such as the trees, pollution. You have programs. You can have the programs if you want, and you can have the macro expenditures. If you want to go with the, we will say grounds maintenance as a macro. We don't have here something that we call parks. We don't have the Department of Parks. So you go parks inside of public works. But I think that they need to work a little. I think that, in my opinion, I suggest that Caroline needs to spend a little time and going line by line. And at this moment, she has the big department, public works, and small divisions. And some of them, they are with duplicity. So she needs to clear out that. And the most important, she needs to spend time in justification or a clarification of each of that accounts, because sometimes they mix one with others. So it's a lot of work, but will be much better. And I think that needs to be done. Thank you.
Agreed.
Excuse me, Michael, can I jump in?
Sure, Charles.
Kind of dovetailing to some degree what Alfonso just said with regard to anticipate potential expense, maybe we don't want to call them projects necessarily, but potential items that may come up. It seems like if there's enough expense that would be associated to those potential items, that those not be part of the budget process, and that they would be required of the city council in a request form come time when that's needed, if in fact that expense ever arises, rather than putting all this cushion effectively in the budget so that, things get really squishy, right? Squishy and, very amendable to be used and something sort of kind of like that particular item, that potential item that was scheduled in the budget. I'm not being very clear here, but it just seems like, there's nothing stopping a department, in this case, the Public Works Department, from go to council if they have a need to request funds to provide for that need, right? It doesn't have to be placed in the budget a priori, not really knowing if in fact that expenditure will ever be used for the current year.
Yeah.
That's it.
Agreed. No, and we've talked about that multiple times, right? Much easier for council to add these things back later than it is to try and get them out of there if things.
Well, there you go. And it would take some of the squish out of the budget too, and make it a little bit more hard, more defined, more allocated.
Sure. Good point. On 5523 building services, without drilling into that too much, that's of course contractual building services for admin police. talks about janitorial, pest control, fire extinguisher inspections, some HVAC. I assume you have those on the service program. Those are all bid driven? Is that where you got that number?
Most of those should be, I believe they all should be bid driven. For the most of those items, we're probably going to have to redo janitorial services at some point. That's also an item that's an item that's in with Public Works that also covers all buildings and all departments. So that's an item that we talked about, Regine and I, looking at and splitting it between the departments because it's all the separate buildings.
Yeah, I agree. That came out of our conversation last week. And like Regine said, if we're going to change that stuff, now's the time to do it. So any of that stuff that's in Public Works that ought to be in general operations or in PD, you guys should get together and split that up. It's just more true accounting. Let's talk about ice service. John, this is your favorite. I added up all of those items there, and if we rebudget the $2,200 this year, we will have spent $12,500 on renting an ice machine. I don't know why we don't buy one and have a maintenance contract. It would certainly be a lot less expensive, but the total for the last few years is over 12 grand to have an ice machine that we rent. So Caroline, I guess my only comment is maybe look at that number and crunch that out. And are we really spending city money in an effective way there?
I can look at that number and see if there's a better way to do that. I do know that the ice is very much appreciated.
And again, that's one of those little things. But when you stop and say, what's going on here? And you start to run the numbers, that's just the last few years. If you run that back even further, we probably bought that ice machine 5 times. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but you follow my thought. Okay, take a look at that for me. Okay. Let's go to 5645, fuel. Wait. Let's go to 5575, wildlife management. This is another one of those that makes a comment about the green tax having some of that, and that's not in fact the case. I don't find that anywhere in green tax, Caroline, so I'm not sure what
that's Regine's comment about. She likes that in the history.
There's no account code 5575 in green tax.
Just a second. Let me look at something real quick.
Sure. So you talk about a net decrease of $2,500. I can't figure out your numbers. I've tried to.
Yeah, I think it was. I think that was supposed to be. Some of it should have been into the green tax. Let me see what was that comment again on there? Sylvia, can you show that again?
5575 is your chart of account number.
It's Regine's historical stuff, 1819.
Yeah, but we're not seeing it in the green tax.
There is no chart of account, Sylvia, 5575. It's not even over there.
Let me look at that and see.
This is Regine's historical about in 1819, that's where it was. No clue. Regine, feel free to jump in. And who's got their hand up? Let me see.
Charles does. Go
Charles,
ahead.
good.
Okay, moving on.
Charles had his hand up, Michael. I don't know if that's
Charles,
still
I'm sorry. Charles, go ahead. No? Okay.
Excuse me, Michael?
Yes, sir.
Did you call me?
Did you have your hand up?
Oh, I may have, but that was from a long time ago. I did have an item though.
Okay.
Item 5740, that talks also about janitorial services that seems to tie in with the item that you were looking at earlier, 5523. And I was wondering if there maybe was some double booking going on there, inadvertently or what have you.
Yeah, my understanding of that item, it's some of the internal supplies that they have around. It's not the janitorial staff coming in to do their work.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Anyway, I'll put a note there, Caroline, if you can look at that and provide some clarity for us on that.
Yes.
5,600 dues subscription fees. We budgeted 15 last year. We only used 6, but we're rebudgeting 15 again. If you've got a reduction in staff, do you need 15?
And we can look at that one and probably come back with a slightly different number on that.
Okay, on to 5645 fuel. How many trucks do we have in Public Works?
I believe we have 5 trucks.
And how many people do you have in your department?
We have 5 people.
So everybody has a truck.
Yes, although I would say that we don't drive the dump truck every day because it's a specialty truck.
So I know that there may be other gases needed for some, weed eaters and all the other stuff. I just wondered, again, you're only projecting to spend 8,000. You've reduced your staff. 1 truck per employee seems a little excessive to me, but that's my personal opinion. So I'm wondering, well, whether 12,000, if you divide that back, it's almost, hold on. It's $200 a month per vehicle for gas.
And I will say that we are driving 1 person per truck right now just for social distancing.
Per truck per month. That's multiple fill-ups of gas. I'm not trying to get too much in the weed here, but I'm just wondering, we don't have as many people. We shouldn't be 5 trucks. Help me understand.
They are driving.
We are still. Yeah.
I know it's only based on what you use, right? So if you don't, but anyway, one of the other things we talked about this year was not trying to tie up money in the budget, right? Because if we say it's 12 and then we're only going to spend 8, that other money gets tied up in the budget waiting to be spent. And at the end of the year, we do that transfer. And what we've been trying to do is get that transfer down. So without locking up funds in a budget item that's never going to be spent, right? So it just frees up more money for the council to decide what to do with that. So that's part of what's driving some of these conversations that we're having. If we're only going to use 8, make it 8. If you need to run over and do a budget adjustment, do that. But if you leave it at 12 and we'd only spend 8, does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I understand.
Hello, anybody there?
In addition, Michael, look the historical. In that historical, they never came to 12,000.
And there's less staff now. So let's cut that back to 8, Caroline. And unless you can come back at the further meeting and tell us why we ought to make that 12, you can always go back to council and do an adjustment. Everybody okay with that?
Okay.
Here.
Okay. Uh, 5111 open space management. That's another one of those that makes the comment moved 4,500 to green tax fiscal year 18-19.
Yeah, so usually that budget was for $5,000 for open space management, but now that's been absorbed by the green tax. So we've only retained $500 in there in case there are things that may come up that we can't really justify as green tax management kind of things.
Okay, we'll come back to that one when we go to the green tax. Repair and maintenance, parks and grounds. You got by on 3. I'm wondering about essential services again. This says increase for picnic tables and dog waste stations in the uplands, as well as safety surfacing at the playground behind docks, which isn't even open. I'm wondering if that's an old comment, because
I
those.
think that yeah,
All right,
that's an
so
old comment that got carried over. I'll fix that comment right there. And as to the safety surfacing, we still have to. So when the playground does open, the playground needs to have safety surfacing. So.
but picnic tables and doggy poopy stations over in the
No,
uplands,
that's already done.
that's not essential services.
No, those are already done. There should be no increase. It should be pretty flat. And I would, I'm not sure where the 3,000 came from. I'm sure we will spend more than 3,000 in parks and grounds.
Will you please go back and review that number?
Yeah, I'll look at that number. Yeah, that shouldn't be 3,000 over there either.
And again, it should be based on what's essential.
Yes.
Thank you. 5745 repair and maintenance equipment. Okay, you've got, you had budgeted 6, you spent 25, so you rebudgeted the 6 here, but in green tax,
I have a question real quick for Susanna. That line number R, is that the year-to-date actuals, or is that the projected actuals?
it's projected. It's supposed to be.
Sorry, which line were we looking at? Is it the equipment?
Column R.
Oh, just the whole column. That's projected how much we're supposed to spend this year.
I'm going to double check that because we've historically always spent, obviously between $11,000 and $6,000 in that area. And I think some of that went down to the 6,000 when we changed over and did some of the stuff in green tax. So I'm going to check that because I think that those numbers are not right.
Okay.
Well, if you look at green tax as well, you've got 6,000 that you wanted in public works, and then you have another 3,000 in green tax. So you've got a total of $9,000, and you're only proposing to spend $500. And your description says, provides funds for the repair and maintenance of equipment involved in water quality protection. Can you tell me like what? That's a question. Caroline. Caroline, are you there? Caroline. All right, so we lost Caroline.
You chased her away.
Well, so my question there is, because like I said, he's got 6,000 here and 3,000 there, so it's almost $9,000, and we went from 2,500 to $9,000. So I don't know how that happened, and there's really no descriptor of a project. It just says maintain equipment that provides water quality protection, and that may be legitimate, but when I see that kind of a percentage increase, it really ought to be substantiated with some sort of what's that tied to, right? I mean, we've gone
Well,
from
that descriptor is incorrect because water quality would be in green tax, not in the general fund, and we're in the general fund portion right now.
I have a question.
So before we leave that item, I'd like to just zero those out until there's some substantiation done for that project line item. Would that be okay?
Okay.
Okay, somebody had a question?
Yes, this is Rudy. On
Hi,
the
Rudy.
comments, so that you don't lose the history, I had a computer program where every time we put in notes, we always put in today's note, but it pushed all of the history down, so you don't read it every time. Is that the possibility in here? So you could put in 7/9/20, discuss changing from 5,000 to 3,000. And then the other stuff doesn't have to be deleted. It just, you can't see it, but it's still there if you ever needed to read that information and get the history.
Yes, we can do that. It wraps.
And every time someone puts a note in there, they need to date it.
Well, I think part of what we're seeing here is all of these things need to be revised and reread. When you see that many that are off topic, it makes me wonder, what else am I not catching that's in here that's really not been updated? So the 5748 repair and fencing, again, we went from using 600 to 2,500. 2,500 was budgeted. I'm just wondering if there's a project tied to that meets the essential, non-essential, because it's just kind of a generic.
Yeah, Carolyn, you're self-muted.
Sorry, I lost sound completely for a few minutes. No, that there's not any anticipated project. That usually is just used for repairing any kind of fences that fall or break during the year.
So that's for materials. You guys do the work in-house, or you're going to farm it out?
Usually we do this kind of work in-house. I can't think of a time. I think the only time I can't think of a time we've actually contracted out a fence.
Okay. And obviously, I think fencing falls into a safety category, so I don't want to get too far in the weeds there. Trails and footpaths, 5753. There's another one where we've got, we budgeted 45, we spent 15, we're coming back 2,500, and then it says moved 2,000 to the green tax. So it's a total of $4,500.
Yeah, it's still about the same amount. We're splitting it with the green tax. I would say the projected actuals would probably be closer to that 4,500 in the end. It would be we split it because there are certain things we do that we can cover under green tax for, like erosion control and things of that nature. But there's also some things that it's not necessarily a water quality issue that we can't cover as a green tax item. And mostly it's, the granite itself is.
Okay. Again, rising to the level of essential versus non-essential.
I mean, the trails and footpaths, they're being really well used right now.
Didn't we already talk about this on another budget item? Remember we talked about the trails being safe? Or where were we talked about that?
That was the Trails Master Plan 5436, the very last row on the prior page.
And so if you wanted to do a cut, I would cut more off the Trails Master Plan. The other one is more along the lines of the maintenance item. The master plan would be more connections and things of that nature, and signage and things of in those areas.
Yeah, I've got a note here. You're going to take another look at that on the master plan. Substantiate $500 as being an essential expenditure. Okay. And I agree, maintaining the trails from a safety perspective is important. On the 5,000 for truck repairs, again, are we? Okay, that number looked as essential. Go ahead. Reaper graphics, small tools. On the third page is item 5815. Provide funds to reimburse employees for travel expenses, hotels, travel. That needs to be, that's not essential, right? Hotels and.
That's just for training for going, if there are any trainings that are happening out of town. Basically, right now, obviously everything is happening online and online, basically. So we can probably take some of that out just over the next year.
Okay.
I mean, we don't want the line to go away, because at some point we will go back to, hopefully, traveling to trainings.
The line won't go away because it's been previously budgeted, but again, we don't want to tie up money if we don't need to. Mileage reimbursements, hotels, meals, and all those things right now just don't. Council can always put that back later. So I would advocate we zero that out. 5820, training and education. $3,000. Your last statement says increase due to new positions. What new position?
Yeah. Nope, no new positions.
Is this certification training?
Yes, and so you'll find it in other budgets too. There's some other certification training in other areas.
Okay, I want to make sure the certification training, because we need to get these certifications done, certainly on the water license process. So I don't want, that's essential.
I'm agreed. I'm done there. Anybody else? All right, let's jump into the green tax. $5133 urban forestry. That was the one we talked about. You're going to take another look at that number.
Yes, I will look at that.
Yeah, the total amount there is. So Caroline, there'll be 1 or 2 meetings at the end here where we'll have what we call go backs. You may be familiar with that, and at that time, then we'll want to revisit all these items with you.
Yes, we'll do that. We'll be ready.
Great. Thank you. The open space management. You budgeted 40 last year. You've spent 15, but you're rebudgeting another 40 for a total of $55,000. Is that essential?
Yes, I would say that managing the open spaces and keeping them healthy. And what we've also done, the other part of that is that we took out general government where we had the money for wildfire control, and we're going to be shifting that into the green tax. So that's where that number, that's why we kept it pretty much the same, because before you would have had, like last year we would have spent the 22,291, or 2 years ago, I guess technically. And then we would have also had 12,000 in we would have had 12,000 in general government. So we kept it at that. So because we shifted fire control into that budget and took it out of the general fund.
So what makes up that? Tell me, just kind of walk me through what you want to spend that $40,000 on.
So we want to spend it on definitely fire control, some natural waterways maintenance. We usually, hopefully we'll be able to have crews come back to help with some of that work. Usually this is when we have American Youth Works come and help us with large scale kind of green space management, brush control, fire break maintenance, natural waterways maintenance. Just helping to keep everything healthy and reducing the dead wood in the area, things of that nature, correcting erosion issues, everything that protects water quality as well.
Michael.
Bonzo.
I think that, again, it's important. If we have $40,000, I remember that in order to hire that group of people that they are working, that crew, it costs $38,000. So it's important that we need to be clear and we need to specify that this money is for outsourcing in order to protect the open space. But in the way that you have that justification is provide funds for tasks related. When I am reading that don't tell me that is something that we were doing previously, and it's a group of people that is coming and is doing specific activities. So that means that because we don't have the workforce in-house, is something that we are doing outsourcing, but that will be help. So in that way, when you need to say, I will hire more people, well, I will hire more people, but if I have at this moment some outsourcing, that will be different criteria. So I think that we have to be more clear in this case. That mainly is because we have some group of people, then they have specific activities. And since last year, I think that they made we tried to do a working program with the specific activities, not whatever they want to do or what do they want to do. We have to analyze more what kind of activities they need to do, and we need to have that in consideration. If you allocate that money, then we'll be clear that is for that people. Thank you.
And I think what we've done in the past is we've given a map, and a map that shows what projects are taking place or proposed to take place in the different areas. We have a map that kind of shows that.
So in the last 5 years, $57,000. Somebody needs to mute. Does this project ever have an end in sight?
The green spaces continue to grow. We continue to, clean them, manage them. I mean, I think when you have open space, I think there are continued investment that you're managing them for a certain task.
Yeah. In 2015, we spent $7,700. In 2016, we spent $12,000. In 2017, we spent $11,000. In 2018, we spent $2,200. And now you want to spend $40,000.
So that was $2,200 here in green tax and $12,000 over in general government. There should have been $12,000 in wildfire protection. I don't know where that line item is right now, but so it should have been in the $34,000.
You're correct. My mistake. I looked at the wrong line item. But I do have to agree with Alfonso. There really needs to be more meat in your description about where these are coming from, and what the $35,000 expenditure is of substance enough that there really needs to be justification for that. Especially, I guess we didn't do it last year, but we spent 15.
Yeah, we did some of it last year, or this fiscal year already. And
you're saying that if this work that needs to be done rises to the level of a health and safety essential service?
Some of them I would definitely say did. So fire breaks, brush control, I think even that can be, that is as a contributing factor to wildfires as well. And natural waterways, that was another one that ranked up there as kind of basically an essential kind of a bronze level service that the city would need to have and maintain, because that not only affects just water quality, but also flooding.
You have natural waterways right below that at 12,000, at an additional 12,000.
Okay, so yes, there is another, hold on. Waterways.
You're already asking for that. Like I said, in another budget, you want another $12,000 to maintain the creeks and waterways. Between the two, you want $52,000.
So yeah, let me look at that number on the natural waterways, because we do some of that in open space. So some of the natural waterways also takes place in the creeks kind of between the houses on the Sunset Valley branch. And that's where we use some of the natural waterways. But I can look at those and kind of come up with a conglomerate number.
Okay. I'll put notes. I'm putting review by all of these. And so we'll come back with some really hard analysis of where those numbers came from, right?
Yes.
And that they rise to the level of essential services. We're not just going out and pruning trees because we have to. What we only want to do is what we actually need to do temporarily, like we've talked about. We can add these things back in the future once the revenues start creeping back up, Caroline. But right now we want to just, what do we just really have to provide? And that's why I'm 40,000 here, 12,000 there. Am I the only one? But I'm kind of struggling with where this money goes.
We'll provide better clarity.
Thank you.
It's certainly not the only one.
Charles, 5823 says provides fund for educational activities related to water quality protection. What would that be? What's a educational activity that's not in your training budget?
We can reduce that out because that should actually just be in a silver budget.
Okay, I'm going to zero that out.
Yeah.
Water quality ponds, 5880. Increase due to city water quality, provides funds for maintenance and repair of city water quality
This
facilities.
has a potential for that. This is the maintenance, and this truly is a shot in the dark because we don't know what that total number is going to be as of yet.
All right, so that will be driven based
We
on,
do know.
yeah. You know, again, what I'm trying to do is not tie up dollars in the budget. You know, we talked about that, and you
I'm
also
gonna
talked
reduce
about.
that. Because I truly don't know. I mean, it is a very complex pond. I don't think anybody thought about the complexity and the maintenance of that pond when it was being developed, but I do not have a number, so I'm happy to reduce that back to the 5,000.
Okay, let's do that, and then if you guys need to increase it, you can do that, and council can just do a budget adjustment. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. Okay, I'm just dropping down now to the last couple items, 7181 through 7211. Those are those projects that are in there. My assumption is they're based on our previous conversations of those projects that are in momentum, right? So to stop them would be detrimental or cost inefficient or not very cost effective for us moving forward.
Yes, I mean, those are projects, I mean, and that are in progress. So Ernest Robles Way, we're going to complete most of that. I did put some money in for next year in case we don't actually finish part of it this year. I'm hoping actually that we do. And then Lovegrass Lane Pond is one that we're going to have to keep working on next year. It's not currently working and we need to have the pond working.
Tell me you've replaced the lift station.
The lifts, we are working on that right now. I met with the engineers this week trying to work out and get a scope of service and kind of a plan for it on the lift station. So
all right.
We'll discuss that with projects.
All right, whatever. Sorry, I couldn't resist. All right, I'm almost finished vlogging you. I'm on to drainage. I'm on to drainage. I'm down to engineer design fees. Engineering assistance. Why? Why do you need engineering assistance? Are there projects that are essential projects that are scheduled that we don't have engineering money for, tied to those projects?
That should be tied to the project, and so it can probably. Unless Sylvia, you have another idea, I think that can probably come out of there.
Okay,
No,
so
that could be zero. They are actually associated with projects.
We're down to 5746. Drainage streets right away, provides funds, repair, maintenance of ditches, storm inlets, blah, 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 along the streets. You spent $200 this year and you want 15,000. Is that related to?
Yeah, that should be. No, that should be. I'm pretty sure we've spent more than that, but I will double check that number. But I would say that given our history, we could probably go lower on that. On the repair and maintenance, we do need some funds in there just to maintain those streets and right of ways, but not project driven. We don't have any major projects that are kind of planned out. There is going to be some work we're going to be doing on some of the streets just to, but nothing major. So I can lower that.
Carolyn, $5,000.
$5,000, yeah.
Okay. What would be my preference would be that would be based on what you really think is going to transpire, not just we can reduce it. I want to give you what you need to provide those essential services. Okay, so take a look at that. I did find my comment back on when we were talking about the water quality ponds under 5880. Under this drainage for 5761, you have $5,000 and it say provide funds for repair and maintenance to detention ponds. But over here, you're also talking about city water quality facilities. Are those both the same?
There are two parts of water quality. Oh wait, Alfonso has his hand up. Hold on just a second, Alfonso. Alfonso, I unmuted you.
Yeah, you got it? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I think that also is important to know how many water quality ponds belongs to the city. So because my understanding, some of that water quality ponds belongs to the business. So for us, perhaps only we have one at City Hall, one in Village, 3 in Meadows, and you refer another in Ernest Robles. But that is a water quality pond, or we have also more water quality ponds?
So yeah, there's more than that. So there's 3 in the Meadows. There are there's Ernest Robles Way. There is the water quality feature at City Hall, which is the rain garden and the wet pond. Plus there's the detention pond. The Village is going to have a kind of water quality and detention as well. So I think, and we have the regional dam structure. So that's where this is we kind of made that distinction a couple years ago, that green tax focuses on water quality and drainage focuses on water quantity. So that's where more of the flood control, and so the dam, where we have to do monthly inspections and monthly maintenance on the dam, that's where this drainage fund focuses on more of the flood control in those parts of the ponds, not necessarily the other half.
Yeah, but Caroline, in Ernest Robles, where we have one lift station down the Madeleine before the bridge, that you call that water quality pond?
Ernest Robles is water quality.
Yeah, but this is then I am telling you that you call water quality pond?
Yes, Ernest Robles would be water quality.
Okay, thank you. So because if you are using that criteria, only that will be in drainage will be the dam. The others, they don't need to be in that place as a water quality ponds. But if you try to look, then in a lot of them, you can bring some metals or toxics. So all of them, they can use that, and you can use water quality, but you don't call water quality. You can call for silt. The silt then will go to that and will affect the water quality from the Edwards Aquifer, because most of that water will drain. So, but that will be your justification. I think that we need to work a little more with your justification. Thank you.
Okay, we can define that. That sounds good, Alfonso. I'd be happy to work with you on that.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else have a question? Okay,
Just on I guess on the regional detention pond dam, we're consolidated those costs into a project versus having them broken out like that. I can't remember, but, just in terms of like the history of that project, we went back and forth a lot on it, and then obviously, some of the leverage of trying to get grant funding and things like that. Can you update me on what the current status of that project is, and I guess anticipated moving forward with it next fiscal year? And also, that total cost right now is like $340,000. Is that correct?
So the grant was denied once again, and Public Works voted to move this down and to not fund it this year.
Okay, so that's not reflected in OpenGov yet. That's just an update you just made. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, what haven't we covered?
Alfonso, do you still have your hand raised?
He's coming in and out. It shows arrived and left, so I'm not sure what's going on.
He didn't have anything.
Oh, his hand's raised again.
Alfonso?
Alfonso, you're self-muted.
Hey, Mr. Cowan.
Hi.
You've missed it. I've been a jerk tonight. Sorry, I read
You were
my
on a roll. You were on a roll, Michael. We didn't want to stop you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I read these numbers. I go through them. I spend the time. I have questions. Caroline, don't take it personal, darling. I'm just.
Mr. Carmona,
I think that,
I don't take it personal.
Okay, don't take it. If you are, I'm sorry, but I'm just digging in.
No, I know it's good. I've been through this a few times.
All right.
but I think it kind of speaks to, I mean, something that I'm seeing that's different, maybe, and you guys have handled this different in the past too, is that I think in the past we really haven't paid as much attention to the venue tax funds, you know, a lot, because they're sort of either self-sustaining or they're, you know, we're trying to cover expenses with the money we're bringing in. And I think there's a tendency not to really look at closely those numbers, which, you know, like the green tax, but we're starting to put more of the money, more of the expenses into those funds, right? We're sort of transferring expenses into those funds in order to save money in the general fund, like we're doing with crime control, like we're doing with, you know, now we're taking expenses in green tax. And at some point, there's a tipping point where you just have to watch that, because if those taxes go away or we put too much in there, you know, but I think the other tendency is that we start losing sight of what we're really spending that money on. And so I think, you know, it's good to go through this exercise, but I just don't remember in the past, like we paid a lot of attention to those, you know, the green tax, you know, for example, because it was kind of self-isolated. So.
And I think that's a good point, Mark. And in the past, there's always been more revenue than expenses. Right. So we really haven't had to lean into those hard.
But it's good to bank, and I think that applying the same philosophy, it's great, because, you know, we bank that money for potential, you know, uses in the future, or even if they're limited or restricted uses, right? There's always some ability to, you know, leverage those funds in some context to save the city general operating fund. So, but I think it's useful to look at those and get more details and bring back the justification for those numbers, and not just have the numbers. I think what's missing is kind of that piece of, okay, well, now that we're breaking these apart into two separate funds, how do we tie them back together to look at them as a cohesive whole when they're covering combined aspects of operation expenses?
Well, we'll try to get a better diagram. I mean, it is in OpenGov, but we can bring forward a better diagram that shows a more cohesive look. Maybe it's just an additional column, as Mr. Goyette stated, but we'll try to figure that out by the next meeting. But I just caution, yes, it's appropriate to fund account. Yes, it's appropriate that each account hold what it's supposed to hold and spend what it's supposed to spend. I just caution in those funds that are typically used for projects that now have staffing costs associated with them. Staffing costs tend to increase every single year. So there will be less and less ability for bigger projects unless we specifically plan for them over a multi-year period. That's my only caution.
Hello? Hello?
Oh, you're back on, Alfonso.
Yeah, I come back. Oh, thank you. Only I try to say that I hope that you, Caroline, you will spend a good time, and we try to spend time looking justifications. And let me tell you something. At this moment, everything is important. So sometimes when we say it's because I remember in my times, no, it's Texas Water Commission requirement. It's a federal and a state requirements. So we try to justify sometimes that kind of things. But now with the budget, I think that needs to be more clear. And the people that we try to evaluate, we have a little open mind and will be more easy to understand that. In my opinion, they are excellent budgets. Every year they look much, much better. But we have to work with that kind of things. Now, Michael, I think that today, I think was more effective, this meeting, because you were doing the leader. You have your questions, and as a leader, you came with all your questions, and later, some of us, we have the same questions that you have. But previously, you allow us to go inside. You were so open and let us to go inside. In one moment we waste a lot of time. I think that today was more productive, is my view, and I hope that we will continue in that way. Thank you.
It's only 7:30. I mean, that's a true measure right there.
The Spurs aren't even on.
Michael, can I jump in?
Just real quick, I have one comment. One of the things
go for it, Michael.
One of the things that we've talked about is, and Sylvia, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I think open government's really a great tool, and what I'm really trying to struggle with is how I can use those tools in tandem. Right, when I'm looking at the numbers on this and then trying to use that, I haven't quite figured out how to make that flow together nicely yet. I'm not that versed in Gov, and maybe if we could spend some more time on that, understanding how we can use that better from our perspective, I think it'll become a more useful tool. So I think it's one of those things over time we're going to get better at, letting go of the old one and figuring out how to integrate the new one. And right now we're just kind of, I know I'm struggling with, I find myself stopping, trying to run a report. About 10 minutes later, I come back to my sheet, and then I just go, well, I got to go do something else and earn a living. So I get derailed with all the data. It's almost like too much data for a data freak, and I just go. Anyway,
I can appreciate that. It is an evolution.
So
we might need another training session where we all pull everything up on the computer and go through it like we are first graders, and just go through, because you can easily you'd be working away and you're in the silver budget and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I meant to be in the bronze budget, So there's easy ways to get confused in that. And so I think just a little more training time where we're sitting in front of OpenGov and going through step by step. How do you do this? How do you do that? So
I'm happy to do that at any time you guys want to set a meeting or at the next meeting, however the committee wants to do that.
Yeah, I'm hopeful one day we can do this in person. It's the best type of training is on a big screen and we're all there and we can see it with our computers in front of us. So, but that may not be for a while. So,
Charles?
Yeah, I'm sort of on the same page. I was going to suggest that in the process of our meeting, the staff could go and bring up OpenGov to, just to familiarize and sort of blend, the two spaces to help us get more familiar just by virtue of seeing it come up and relating to the subject at hand, right? And I wanted to request a budget, maybe a budget item.
Can you mute Phil? Thank you. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, I wanted to suggest maybe not a budget item. I'm sorry, an agenda item to talk to this sheet that we've seen again in our packets, the budget summary, to kind of help. I think that relates somewhat to what Mark was saying. Kind of get a look from the top down, and try to see this budget from both ends. From a on high looking down versus the bottom up look that we typically work at, right? We work in the details, we work on line item basis, but sort of a top view, you know, reserve, committed, non-committed, all of these various definitions, how they apply, you know, big picture stuff. And maybe one other suggestion that would be helpful for me is when the meeting convenes, maybe staff could give their own report on how the budget has evolved since our last meeting. You know, I think that might be useful to put us all on the same page and give us some appreciation for what has changed, you know, in the time frame at hand. Thank you.
You're talking about the revisions?
Yeah, revisions and just I don't know, just how they arrived at, you know, how the budget evolved, the changes they made, and maybe in the process sort of provide some insight into where their thinking is. You know, I mean, they're leading this charge. They're putting this budget together. Where we look at it, we make suggestions, we pick away at it, right? But I mean, it's coming from the city. It's coming from the staff. I mean, they're generating this information. If they could help us, help me, and I got to speak for myself. I mean, I could get a lot of value from that insight and how they arrived at what they arrived, how it's changed over time, how it integrates with, you know, with the OpenGov system, because they're using it. They know our process, right? They know OpenGov. They can help bridge the gap and give us the benefit of their expertise, of their knowledge, right? You know, they're the teachers. They can be the teachers to a degree. It doesn't have to be a training sessions. I mean, we train dogs, right? Just the benefit. No, really. I mean, you know, I got to put some color in this conversation, right? I mean, shit, I'm sitting behind a mic here, right? I don't even expose myself. By the way, Terry, I'm competing with your beard. I got myself quite a crop.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
You know, if we ever get back together, I want to surprise you all, right? And by that time, I may look like Jerry Garcia. I may look like Santa Claus. I'm not sure.
Billy Gibbons.
Yeah. Anyway, some suggestions, just to help the process. And if there's anybody looking on, you know, that isn't part of this committee, they could also potentially benefit from a higher level discussion that, you know, and OpenGov, how it applies to our, you know, to the city going forward, right? This is going to be our new tool. Thank you.
Agree completely. Suzanne and I had a great conversation yesterday about the process and making it better and richer and easier to understand. And, you know, I think that's always been a focus for the committee that we've always talked about. How can we make it better and easier? And I think, as Alfonso said, just in the last few years, we've continued to do that as a committee and are trying to. And I think OpenGov is almost a paradigm shift for us, right? It's such a quantum leap from where we've been. In terms of its transparency, it's excellent in that regard. For us, trying to figure out how we work with that, I think, is a real challenge. But good comments. I agree. We're getting better slowly.
Alfonso has his hand up.
Alfonso, one more time. Going once.
You're self-muted, Alfonso.
Going twice.
Hello.
Hey!
No, I don't have my hand up.
Oh no.
It's gone.
I'm so happy that I am agreeing. So it'll be 8 o'clock, so I will have a lot of good time. So
yeah, I can see the sun's still up. All right. We've had a lot of fun, boys and girls. It's time to call it quits. Anybody else have anything else they want to cover?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Mark. And there was a second. Thank you, John.
Yep.
Good night, everyone.
good night.
Thank you, Caroline.
Night.
Thank you,
Good night.
Tab.
Thank you.